All right, Andrew, can you hear me? All good? Okay. Well, Andrew, it's good to see you. I'm sorry about the things that are happening with you with the hurricane and everything. I hope everything is all right. But I look forward to this debate. Hopefully, it'll be a good distraction for you, something enjoyable to do. Now, with that being said, let's get into the resolution itself, which is that Harry Potter would have been a superior book if Harry had ended up with Hermione. Now, there is a couple terms I'd like to define here. The first is that of superior from Merriam-Webster, which is of higher rank, quality, or importance, and end up with. End up with is defined contextually by the end of the Harry Potter books, at which point Ron and Hermione get married. So with that, I affirm the resolution by saying that Harry Potter would have been a higher quality book series if Hermione had married Harry, not Ron. To support this resolution, I'll present a background point and then two contentions. The background point is that of a writer's thought process. And what I mean by this is the differentiation between an initial outline and then three-dimensional characters. Now, I've written multiple screenplays myself. I went to a film school. I studied under Chris Riley, author of The Hollywood Standard. One thing that I can tell you is that all writers will begin with a basic outline for where their characters are going to go. But then those characters, once they are created, take on a mind of their own. So then it is all about the characters themselves and what they will do with their own decisions. Now, a good writer will let these characters make decisions on their own. This is where we get into a bit of an issue with Harry Potter, though. J.K. Rowling said, quote, "I wrote the Hermione-Ron relationship as more of wish fulfillment. For reasons that have very little to do with literature and far more to do with me clinging to the plot as I first imagined it, Hermione ended up with Ron. It was a choice I made for very personal reasons, not for reasons of credibility," end quote. Because she stuck with her outline, rather than letting the characters make decisions for themselves, we get into two problems. The first contention I have is that of a lasting relationship. Ron and Hermione could not have a lasting relationship because they are always bickering. They do not establish trust with each other. In fact, Ron shows clear jealousy, getting upset with Harry Potter and leaving them. Contrast each of these with the relationship that Harry and Hermione could have, as they often have the ability to communicate with each other. They are not constantly bickering. They have mutual respect for each other. For this reason, it seems clear that a lasting relationship between Harry and Hermione is more likely. The second contention I have is that of literary authenticity. As J.K. Rowling herself has said, if she was writing this simply because she wanted it to end up this way, rather than because it actually made sense for it to end up this way, she sacrificed the literary authenticity of the work. That means it was not a higher quality or superior form of work. So for these reasons, it seems clear that it would have been a superior book had Harry ended up with Hermione.
Okay, I want to thank Daniel for having this debate. Can you hear me? I want to apologize. I'm kind of displaced in my bedroom, not my living room, so if I'm not looking in the right direction, it's just I'm a refugee camp in there right now. And let's get straight into this. Okay, I'm cool with his definitions. I have no problem with that. The one thing I want to ask that he defines is, what is a bright line? Like, what's the bright line of more superior? Like, what makes something more superior? So what level does he have to show of superiority to make this more superior? Does that make sense? Cool. Just you got to give me that bright line. You got to give me that weighing mechanism there. I'm going to kind of briefly go over my case, and then I'll attack his. One, my first contention is going to be why Harry and Hermione won't work. It's one, that Hermione would never be the supporting role. Two, the plot holes for Ron. And three, Harry didn't want Hermione. My second contention is why Harry and Ginny do work. One, Ginny was intertwined in Harry's story. Two, beauty is not just skin deep. They had an actual relationship. And three, Harry was genuinely jealous of Hermione of Ginny when not Hermione. And three, Harry Potter was already superior. And I'll prove that as we go, but I want to get into your case, so that's just kind of an outline of mine. One, he talks about the his opening point. He talks about the wish fulfillment and talks about the basic outline and character's development. And then he brings up this J.K. Rowling quote and what she said in an article. Two responses to this. One, in that article, she said Hermione and Ron were meant to be together, but she never in that article says that Harry and Hermione were meant to be together or meant to be married. She just said that Hermione and Ron were wish fulfillment, but she never ever says that Hermione and Harry were better. Therefore, that doesn't commit. 2, JK said she did it for selfish personal reasons from her past. And that is exactly what art creating and authorship are about. To make something genuine, it's better if you pull from your own memories and pull from your own experiences to be able to put that in your work. If she wouldn't have drawn from her past emotion, there's no reason to say that emotion would be in the relationship to make it more superior. Going on to his second quote, he says, 1, lasting relationships. And he says that Ron and Hermione were always bickering. 1, bickering's okay in a relationship. Me and my wife bicker and joke and little argues all the time. Many relationships have that. That doesn't mean that it's not going to last for that. 2, jealousy and leaving. When Ron left because he was jealous of Harry and Hermione's relationship, showing his few affection for Hermione because he was jealous that another relationship he thought could have formed. And 2, the literal authenticity. There's no way to say that this is not literally authentic just because this was written that way, and that's to go on. I'll get more into my case in my next speech. I just wanted to give him some clash, so that's why I outlined mine.
Okay, so first you asked the question of the bright line. Well, the bright line, I mean, we're questioning a literary work, so the bright line is going to be relatively subjective. But if there is to be a bright line, it would simply be, what is the most objective standard we can have? How can you determine this question? What is of higher quality? We can define that for ourselves. I believe that higher quality would simply mean one side has the ability to have a longer, more lasting relationship, and that the work itself would be of more of a literary. If we approach this as literary critics, what would a more reasonable version of the writing be based on those characters? Your case is that Harry and Hermione won't work, that Harry and Ginny does work, but you didn't present any analysis of this. My one overall response to it simply would be that it's preconceived. From the very beginning, J.K. Rowling had already decided it would be this way. But we're not really talking about the previous books. We're talking about how the characters wound up by the end, whether or not those would have worked. You said that J.K. Rowling had never said that Harry and Hermione would have worked. Well, actually, she did. Let me find. She said, quote, in some ways, Hermione and Harry are a better fit. And I'll tell you something very strange. When I wrote Deathly Hallows, I felt this quite strongly when I had Hermione and Harry together in the tent. I hadn't told Stephen Kloves, and when he wrote the screenplay, he felt exactly the same thing at exactly the same point. David and Steve, they felt what I felt when writing it. And actually, I liked that scene in the film because it was articulating something I hadn't said, but I had felt. I really liked it, and I thought that it was right. I think you do feel the ghost of what could have been in that scene. End quote. So J.K. Rowling does say that Harry and Hermione are a better fit, and that she even liked the fact that a new scene was added to the Deathly Hallows in which it showed that relationship between Harry and Hermione. You talked about how J.K. had done it for selfish reasons and that was okay. My response is that it sacrifices the characters. We talked about this. The outline itself is not the answer. What we have to do is allow the characters to speak for themselves, to do the thing that is natural. You then talked about how bickering is okay because you bicker. Well, not bickering if that is the fundamental way of your relationship. This is why Rupert Grint said that he actually believes that these characters would be divorced by now. It would not work. He said, quote, I would expect Ron has probably divorced Hermione already. I don't think that relationship would have done well, end quote. So we have J.K. Rowling and Ron both said it won't work because their entire relationship is founded on bickering. You stated that the reason that Ron left was because he was jealous of Harry and Hermione, but that's the problem. If that jealousy is going to make him actually run away from her, that's going to show up in an actual marriage. That will be a dangerous problem. And then I wasn't exactly sure what your response to my contention 2 was, but my overall point, oh, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to get into my case a little bit, and then I'll get back to some argumentation on that one. First, on my case, we looked at the first argument about why Harry and Hermione wouldn't work. And I said, 1, Harry would never be the supporting role. Hermione was always striving to be the best. She was known for wanting to excel at anything she did. Hermione would never settle for being the wife of Harry Potter, and if she married him, that's all she would be. She would never be known as Hermione Granger, and the thing she was succeeded in would always be second place to the fact that she was the wife of Harry Potter. In the same way that the bickering, Hermione was a leading factor in her own mind, and she would have never settled for second place. 2, the potholes for Ron. We can't just look at the end of the book, and we can't just look at the relationship. We have to look at what this would make it a superior book as a whole. And if Ron doesn't end up with Hermione, who does Ron end up with? The beauty of this ending was all major characters ended up with someone that was a main part of the storyline. So we have to look at the fact to make it a superior book, all characters' storylines have to be ended, and Ron's isn't ended in this scenario. 3, Harry didn't want Hermione. Harry never immediately comments on Hermione's appearance, and he was never jealous of Hermione's other lovers. We never see that fulfill, and he can say it's because of preconceived notions, but it even goes back to the first and second book. 2, I don't buy the argument that we can't look at those books because we have to look at the story as a whole to see if it would be a superior book. 3, why Ginny and Harry do work. We look to their humor in the third book, and we looked at when he was genuinely jealous of other men. And then the intertwined argument, Ginny was intertwined in the story of Harry with the Tom Riddle and the Chamber of Secrets. I have some quotes in there, but just for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into the actual book quotes. 3, and this goes to the bright line argument. He says specifically about the relationship. We can't take the relationship into a whole. We have to take the book because that's what the resolution calls for. Harry Potter is already superior. This is the bright line he has to prove. According to Times Magazine in 2013, Harry Potter brand was about $15 billion. 11 million copies of the final book were sold on the first day. 450 million Harry Potter books are in print nationwide. 73 translations of the book. And The Cursed Child, a spinoff of the book, had the most prints sold in 2016 by over 3 million from its second place competitor. All 7 books were listed in at least the top 50 young adult books of all time per magazine Goodreads, and Amazon has them listed in the top 20. It doesn't get more superior than that. He has to prove the superiority of the book would be better if this relationship happened. Going on to his case. He goes on to the argument of J.K. Rowling says that, 1, we're looking at the movie. The extra scene does not go into this resolution because it's the movie situation, not the scene situation or the book situation. 2 on this is that moment, it was a moment of friendship and the moment of her choosing him. It never causes that to happen. 2, the bickering was always a bickering and they always got through it and moved on. Their relationship came to fruition through the bickering, which shows they were able to problem solve and work as a couple to further themselves.
Okay, now I'm going to start with that thing you just said at the end there, that they were able to problem solve, that their bickering worked them through it. The problem is Rupert Grint didn't think that. Rupert said that they would be divorced by now. The actual character who is inside of the person who is trying to embody this role, he said that not only was it a problem, it would lead to their divorce. J.K. Rowling said there was a better couple because that bickering is so much more. I think I'm gonna define why this is. When there's bickering, usually if it's high school, that's okay. It's cute. It's sweet. It's a little love story, right? But then as soon as it gets into a marriage, it becomes so much more. And the problem is if their entire way of communicating is through this, it's going to cause problems. This is why none of the people involved thought that it would work. Now, you stated that the bright line, you said that Hermione would not settle, that she had to be the top one. My response is that they can work together. Hermione is a heroine. Harry is a hero. They can work together on that. We actually see this throughout the books. The two of them are able to problem solve. Neither of them are trying for superiority. They are a perfect team. They'd be able to continue that. You said there'd be potholes for Ron and that the books would be superior as a whole. Not if it doesn't work. If their characters are going to end up divorced, that is not a superior form. That's not better. And you said that Ron would need someone. Well, you can give him anyone else. Just don't give him the person who he cannot work with. You said that Harry didn't like Hermione. Well, at the end, that's what J.K. Rowling herself said. She said that she felt it at the end during Deathly Hallows. She hadn't intended it that way, but that was the way that it worked out. You said that Ginny and Harry had humor and that they were intertwined. My first response is that it was forced because that was the way that she needed to set Harry up with someone, and then so she forced it into that. My second response is that underdeveloped. Ginny is the most underdeveloped character in the entire books. We don't know anything about her. Basically, she is a Gryffindor, and she's cool. That's basically all we know. There's nothing about her character that makes any sense on that. You stated that the superiority of the book would make sense, that was the overall focus. And then you talk about how there was the extra scene, and that your response to my case was the extra scene. My response is that J.K. Rowling said she liked that extra scene because it communicated exactly what she was trying to say, which was that Hermione and Harry were the better fit. Now I want to go into another quote here, which is from Neville, the actor who played Neville, who said, oh wait, let me find this. He said, Matthew Lewis, who played Neville, said, quote, Ron and Hermione don't see eye to eye because I've taken Ron's side in the relationship, obviously. They've got everyone split off, divorced, friends-wise. We have to choose, end quote. So what he's saying is not only are these characters going to be divorced, they're going to have a bitter divorce, and they're going to force the others to have to choose between them. That is not a superior result.
Okay, lots of responses here. My first response to this is he's using movie actor quotes, so he's not actually basing it from the quote book. This is based from the screenplay of the movie and not the book itself. Therefore, these argumentations are from a different setting and a different standpoint. There are a lot of scenes that were actually left out of the book that are left out of the movie that are in the book, so they didn't even fully develop the character that J.K. Rowling created because of that situation. My second point on this is he's talking about divorce and how it would end in a divorce. That pertains nothing to this resolution. The resolution is saying it would be a better book. It would be a better book. So what he's talking about is post-book. He's talking about in this fictional future that exists outside of this. We're talking about in the scenes of Harry Potter, it would have been a better book if in that last scene, they would have been married. The two problems with this. One, for that to happen, the entire first 7 books would have had to be rewritten. Like everything would have had to be redone. The relationship between Ginny and Harry, the relationship between Hermione and Ron, all of that would have had to have been recreated. There's too many unknowns that exist within that to prove that it would have been a superior book, because you're talking about rewriting the entire series for this outcome to be able to happen. Ginny and the Fascination, all of those different things have to be rewritten in order for this to happen. We're talking about the book itself. The resolution says that if he ended up with Hermione, the book would have been superior. I've proven how the book was superior, and all my statistics, he doesn't even talk about that it's a superior book. He can't prove that by this happening, the superiority would have been greater. Going on to his some of the attacks he personally made. One, he talks about, again, the deleted scene. The deleted scene's not in the book. We're talking about the superiority of the book. She said she liked that moment, but again, it all was in the context of a friendship. There was not a physical relationship in that moment. He talks about Ron himself said that they would have ended up divorced. Again, they're talking in a post-Harry Potter world that doesn't exist within the realm of the books. 1. 2, he didn't actually get the full story of the book because he didn't create every scene that was in the book. That's why we can't look at that. 3, he says that Ginny is the most underdeveloped character in Harry Potter. 100% disagree. We know of her family outcome. We know she was kind of a lone sheep. She was the only girl in a woman of men. She led Dumbledore's army at the end of the book and completely created this resistance in Hogwarts after Harry left. She was a fully developed character and fit into the storyline of Harry Potter himself, and that's why that is created. Onto the bickering. He talks about the bickering not being a good part of the marriage and all of that. Again, we look to the end. He's talking about a post-book scenario is my one answer to that. 2, some bickering is healthy for relationships to actually succeed and to happen, and the fact that they were able to get through these bickerings and these arguments is something that is proven. They continuously, time after time, wanted each other after that. He said it's forced. It wasn't forced because the characters continued to do it and happen in their own terms.
J.K. Rowling said that, quote, Ron and Hermione had a young relationship. I think the attraction itself is plausible, but the combative side of it, their bickering, I'm not sure you could have got over that in an adult relationship. There was too much fundamental incompatibility, end quote. Ron and Hermione do not make sense. It cannot work. Every time we see them, they are arguing. Here are some points of that. Harry got so tired of Ron and Hermione sniping at each other over their homework in the common room that he left. What do you think, Sirius? Harry said loudly, and Ron and Hermione stopped bickering to listen. Quote, Ron and Hermione argued all the way back to the common room. Quote, unwilling to go back to Gryffindor Tower and listen to Ron and Hermione snarling at each other, Harry instead watched Hagrid dig, end quote. Every single time that you see these characters, they are bickering with each other. J.K. Rowling says it is a fundamental incompatibility. The attraction may be plausible. That was pre-written. That makes sense. But they have a fundamental incompatibility with a future long-term relationship. They are a high school romance. How often do high school romances work out? Well, a study by Brandon Gale found that only 2% of high school romances could actually lead to a marriage. And out of the 2% that do, 54% will end in divorce within the first 10 months. This is because high school romances are based on a child's emotions. J.K. Rowling herself has said that they had a fundamental incompatibility, a young relationship, that Harry and Hermione would have been better. He responds to my points about the movie actor quotes by saying that they're just movie actors. Well, these are the characters themselves. These are the people who spent their entire childhood getting inside the minds of these characters. They say that Ron and Hermione cannot work. J.K. Rowling says the only reason she put them together was simply because she had pre-wrote it that way. Not because it was better, not because it's better like he's saying it is. He's disagreeing with the author herself. He's disagreeing with the actors who embodied these characters. So my overall response to him is simply that the books will not be superior if it does not add up. For this reason, it makes so much more sense for a superior work in which the characters do the thing which makes the most sense as characters. That's what J.K. Rowling herself said.
Okay, couple problems with this whole debate. I'm going to sum this up in about 4 different scenarios here. One, again, it goes to the characters in the movie. He said that they grew up in their childhood on this character. I actually read an article today that specifically said that 40% of the characters in Harry Potter had never read Harry Potter before being cast in Harry Potter. So they didn't grow up in this situation. They went by the screens and went by the scripts and went by these different things that they had read. And some of them hadn't even read the books before they specifically happened. But my first argumentation on this is, in the bigger picture of this debate, one, Harry Potter would have been a superior book if Harry ended up with Hermione. Even if I grant him that Hermione and Ron won't work, which I haven't granted him that. But one, even if I do, he's never proven how Harry and Hermione would. I specifically said that the attraction wasn't there. I've specifically done all of these different things. He refuses to show that in this. Even if they don't work, he has to prove that Harry and Hermione being together makes this a more superior book in the end. And he just says it's allowing the characters to fruition for themselves. My second answer in this is he's not the characters either. He doesn't know how this specifically ends up. My second reason you're going to vote con today is specifically in the argumentation of the superior book. My whole analysis of the fact that for this to happen, the entire series would have had to be rewritten. And for that to be rewritten, there's no way he can bright line prove or any way prove that it would be a more superior book. Look to the statistics I gave earlier. $billion industry, millions of copies sold. The last book had 15 million copies sold, and you even look to the new screenplay that just came out that talks about the children of these two different relationships sold 3 million more than the second place book in 2016. Obviously, the book is still superior to all other books within the realm that she created when the sequel that was a screenplay written about this, even if she didn't write it herself, was based on the ending that happened in Harry Potter, outsold every book by 3 million sales that year. That shows the superiority of the ending that was created post Harry Potter. He has never, ever been able to prove that doing this and rewriting the entire series would have that same form of superiority in the realm of the books. We don't look to the relationships past tense because we're not asking about the relationships past tense. The books only existed in this realm. We're looking at those books being superior, and how she ended it was not a divorce, and therefore you can't take divorce analysis into play in this debate. Because of that, you're going to look to the fact, you're going to look to what was happening, you're going to look to what the superiority exists, and he cannot prove that rewriting the books and rewriting the ending would make it more superior than it is now.
Advocating that we rewrite the books. I never have. I have said what J.K. Rowling said, which was that she regrets that she didn't simply write a little bit of a different ending. That's all she had to do. It would have made perfect sense if she simply had the characters do what the characters were clearly intended to do, as she herself said. My opponent is not actually recognizing the fact that he is contradicting the author of the books, as well as the actors who embody these roles who can tell us more about them than anyone else. He also did not respond to the fact that high school romances don't work, especially high school romances that are based upon a bickering. They fail 98% of the time, and then out of the ones that do actually end up in marriage, 54% divorced almost immediately. It cannot work because they're based on childish emotions. That's why J.K. Rowling herself said she regretted that she had forced her characters into something that did not make sense. He talked about how 40% of the actors have never read the books. Well, Emma Watson had read the books. J.K. Rowling obviously had read the books. Rupert Grint, I believe he had. I'm not sure, but I know that the other two had. He talked about superior. He keeps coming back to this whole thing of rewriting. I'm not contending that they had to rewrite the original books. I'm saying that what could have happened was J.K. could have done exactly what she said she wished she would have done. I agree with the author of the books. The last thing he said was that he wished that I had shown that Harry and Hermione were better. Well, I did. J.K. Rowling had said she thought that Harry and Hermione were better, but they weren't the only ones. Movie Pilot did a review in which they wrote, quote, actually, wait, I don't even have that with me. Where is that? Just a moment here. They said Hermione and Harry help each other in situations where Ron would be useless. Hermione through her intelligence and wisdom, and Harry through his bravery. They never get into petty fights, unlike Ron and Hermione. And Harry and Hermione have a fantastic understanding of how one another work, founded on mutual respect, which is more than can be said for Ron and Hermione. Crucially, their balanced relationship means they can work harmoniously through an absence of jealousy, end quote. So because of communication, respect, understanding, Harry and Hermione simply make more sense. This is backed up by the author of the books herself, as well as the actors who portrayed these roles. The choice is clear. The books would have been superior, both for the characters and for the work as a literary whole. Because if you take what the characters are meant to do and force them into something else, that makes it not work out. That cheapens the work. J.K. Rowling felt bad about this, but that's exactly what happened.
Look to first. He says he's not advocating rewriting the old books. He's only advocating rewriting the ending. So all he's advocating for is that final scene at the platform 9 3/4, Harry being with Ron, or Harry being with Hermione and Ron being with someone else. One, that would not make it superior at all because it would make no sense. If you look to the Battle of Hogwarts at the very end, Ginny's in Harry's arms. They're together. They're celebrating. You see those together. So he's saying all of this built-up relationship that had happened just ends at the final scene, and we look to the essence of these two different couples being together. There's so many unanswered questions in that scenario that would have infuriated readers to the point of, well, okay, so we ended with Harry and Hermione not together, and then we fast track 15 years and they're together. Like, there's no sense. We have to show these relationships form for there to be that actual conclusion for that to happen. That's where we have the rewriting of the books have to play to him to be able to get the ending that he wants. And you have the rewriting of the books, there's no proof of superiority. End of the story, end of the discussion right there. He can't prove that superiority. The burden falls on him to do that at this point. I've proven the case of how it is superior now. He can't prove how this would make it more superior, or a superior book. And then he goes to this high school romance argumentation and all of this situation. One, again, there's no proof that Harry Potter and Hermione would have lasted either. He never shows how through this non-bickering relationship, there's non-bickering relationships in high school that also work out. He's never built the case for that to happen. He's just said the writer intended it. But one, he's already said the writer made a mistake. How can she not make a mistake again? Two, he's using people from the actors that don't even have the full concept of the books that they've actually portrayed. They've just done scenes and parts of the books from that in that situation. And then two, he comes back to this whole rewriting the ending. He's not advocating that for that, but he clearly is. He is saying just rewrite the ending, not the books. If you do that, there's too many unanswered questions about how that builds up.
You rewrite the last book. Everything in the last book. You don't need to have the Battle of Hogwarts with Ginny at the end. You don't need that part. You rewrite the last book, just like the author herself says she wished she would do, so the characters do what is in their best interest, what would make the most sense. I have two voting issues. The first voting issue is that of an impossible relationship. J.K. Rowling said they were fundamentally incompatible. Ron and Hermione could not work. Rupert Grint said they would not work, they'd be divorced. Neville, the actor who played Neville, said it would be a bitter breakup. All the sources tell you this is impossible. All the sources on the other side, J.K. Rowling and Movie Pilot, have both said Harry and Hermione made sense. And actually, I'm just going to make that the overall voting issue, because when you look at the superior quality, it is better for the characters and it is better for the literary authenticity if the book would have been rewritten, the final book, the way J.K. Rowling said.
Three reasons you're going to vote for Con. One, he said just rewrite the last book. Okay, in the same instance, if you built this relationship for Harry and Ginny for the last 3 books before that, and then you get to the last book and completely change the situation, it's not going to make sense to the readers. Like, we put so much time in this Harry and Ginny relationship, and then for it to completely fall apart in the it's not going to work, and it's going to, again, leave a lot of unanswered questions. 2, rewriting the last book in the essence of, okay, if Harry and Hermione are together, then there's no controversy between Harry and Ron over Hermione in that tent to make that threesome situation where they separated actually work. Like, it doesn't make sense rewriting just the last book for that to happen. 2, you're going to vote for Con based on his voting issue alone. 1, his only voting issue in this debate is that Harry or Hermione and Ron will never work. He never proves in his voting issues that Hermione and Ron or Hermione and Harry will. At the point where he only says it, fine, if I grant him that issue, his only voting, even if I give him his only voting issue, that Harry and Hermione or Hermione and Ron will not work, he does not prove that it would have been a superior book because he doesn't prove that Hermione and Harry do work. But your third and final voting issue is going to be the superiority stands. It's already proven how it is a superior book and how it does exist. For him to be able to rewrite even the last book, there's no proof that the superiority, the reselling of the play, the reselling of all of this would have existed and continued on. Without that proof, he cannot prove that Harry would have been a superior book at the end of it.